So I've been getting a lot of questions lately in response to the last comments about what to do with the fisheries as well as the forests that have come to have some issues due to humans, due to us. And the biggest goal looking into this is to improve the conditions of our natural resources for our generations to come. However, the challenge is that we're so dependent upon Earth for resources. And it has been said and it has been seen in various areas that civilizations decline as environments decline. People have lesser quality of life, jobs go away, so on and so forth. And the population is continuously increasing currently. We are projected to basically quintuple from generations past by the next 50 years in comparison to background times of the Industrial Revolution. That was a catalyst. Now, we need to work towards preserving our fisheries as well as restoring our forests because of our dependency. We get most of our building products, most of our food, most of everything we need from the earth. It's not something that we're able to just genetically engineer and create in a lab. And if we can get a bigger grassroots movement that is not just local but becomes prevalent on the global scale, then these resources can be preserved and restored for generations to come so that we can continue having a great quality of life. If this doesn't occur, then a decline in what's available ecologically and a lack of diversity of what's available will occur, as well as worsening conditions of our natural habitats for food and our natural resources for food, recreation, jobs. And when that happens, quality of life declines, which then in turn creates social issues and political issues, and it'll result in many wars, as has been depicted in a variety of movies. So we're going to get into some of the meat and some of the meat and gravy of what makes up these issues that are occurring and some of the past issues that have created these issues that we're now having to essentially not put band-aids on heart attacks anymore. We have to actually fix it and create a sustainable continuation of our resources. And we are going to talk a bit more about that meat and gravy that we were going to get into, of what's making up these issues. So the restoration of forests is highly important, as if we look at areas such as the Appalachian forest, it's considered to be one of the most extensive temperate forests. However, much of it has been lost due to coal mining, and that the timber and coal are highly rich in this region. And the area is home to 40 commercially important trees and plants. So with that being said, that indicates that there are a large proportion of mineral and energy resources found in forested areas. However, these areas are often disturbed by mining. Now, the interesting thing about the Appalachian forest is that it's also home to a variety of people, many who like to live off the land and have great respect for the land, are very green in how they live off the land, making their own homes, often using the waterways to get around compared to driving a car, taking buses, so on and so forth. Now, the reason to move towards restoration is that very little land has historically been protected from logging, and the devastation is caused by deforestation and soil erosion. Now, the reason to push further towards restoration and create the movement is to return the land to its original productivity and native species present, and to redevelop natural types of land so that they are like how they were historically. So a big program that is helping this and has for the past nearly 50 years now is the surface mining Control and Reclamation Act. It began in 1977, I do believe, and it was as an effort to help reduce soil erosion and restore the land back to a forested area after mining was done. Now, a study in the 70s did find that in 4 states and 25 locations that the program was not truly active or effective, and that where it was being revegetated, that the dominant vegetation was not native species. So the Surface Mining Control and Reclamation Act refocused and looked at basically restoring the environmental conditions that were there before, such as helping to decompact the soil to help increase the livability for native species. Now, that being said, restoration is not always an easy task, as very well demonstrated in these areas where mining was prevalent. And restored areas need to be self-sustaining and fulfill ecological, social, and economic objectives. And with these programs that are put in place, they need to support all those angles of sustainability. And when we do that, we're able to keep people happy with the social opinion and how people look at the land and programs. But we're also able to make sure that ecologically and environmentally, the land is not only livable for people, but also is getting restored with the flora and fauna that was there, and that's repopulating and growing stronger. Economically, it is still a place where people make their living. It's where there's a lot of great resources that we can look to use. However, they need to be in a renewable manner. And a great example of an area that has managed to restore these lands is Europe. And they've managed to do that through a variety of programs, and we can look at them as a starting point for how we can help. Now, there's one big issue with restoration which makes it very difficult to do, and it can be the property rights and control from private and public entities, which complicate the issues depending on the types of program. And sometimes they're more effective when the government's involved, other times it's more effective with the public entities. And with Florida actually has so many great programs that are for outdoors. And we've all seen how trees have been cleared to create new developments. And we've all heard the stories of black bears moving more into towns because of their land and their woods disappearing. Same goes for panthers and a variety of other species. But we're going to get into that a little deeper in a little bit when we get into all of the programs that Florida has in place to help our wildlife. Okay, so now we're here with Frankie the fish, and I'm not quite sure what species Frankie is, but he's definitely probably a river fish or a lake fish. Now, let's get into fisheries. Fisheries have been known to provide 20%, not 20%, of animal protein for the world. And there are 55 million employed and hundreds of millions that recreate in these fishery areas. Now, that's a pretty astonishing number, though not really that astonishing when you consider that the Earth has about 7 billion people. Now, you can look at the wetlands areas, and 22 out of 32 major cities also reside on these areas due to their richness of resources, and they have been decimated over the years. And 70 to 90% of riparian areas have been altered to benefit communities. If we look at the Colorado River, where you have the Hoover Dam, that is a big one. It's diverting that natural flow of water. And riparian areas are areas relating to wetlands or near rivers. And these areas are where a lot of people have made their livelihood over the years and over the generations. And 53% of wetlands have been lost since the 1780s. And this indicates how we have just moved into it, filled it in, and used it to benefit the community versus looking at the fact that it is a big resource for us and we need to respect it. Now, if we're looking at a little more offshore, as even in coastal areas, many fisheries have been fully or overexploited at this point, which means that a lot of fish aren't there to catch anymore. We see that with a variety of populations in the Pacific where they've been overfished. We also see it in the Atlantic and the Gulf, for examples. And we can even look at why these reasons happen, and it's because people love fish. There's a big industry for fish and commercial fishermen. You also have recreational fishermen who don't always follow federal and state regulations in terms of fishing. And we call that poaching. Now, to restore and preserve these areas, it's very important to do so because of the high resource quality and quantity in these riparian areas. And a great example, this is the Everglades area, and say even Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary. These are areas that, and Stair Island, that have been restored or have made movements to be restored and have basically started that movement here in the state of Florida. And we see the benefits of them, such as areas coming back, snook populations increasing in Rubber Bay, for example, and along coastal regions. Now, efforts that have been made on a larger global context to help restore the areas are sea ranching, which is basically releasing certain fish for recapture very soon. Stock enhancement is basically breeding these fish so that they can be a great resource for the future as well, and restocking them to basically increase the population for further capture in the future with captive breeding, so that those fish grow up originally from the egg in a safe harbor of environments. Now, overall, there needs to be movement to head back towards the pre-disturbance, and we are seeing that in Florida as well, with how they're trying to restore the natural flow to the Everglades. And Corkscrew Swamp is a great example of how we are making that motion to do so, as well as Crew in Estero, Florida. And some other great examples of what we do in the state of Florida through myfwc.com. You can find all of these great resources. FWC is Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission, and they are the stewards to the environment. They are our wildlife law enforcement who are there to not just educate us humans, but also there to protect our wildlife, our fish, and our land-rodent species. And they have so many different types of programs, from the sport fish restoration program, the catch and release programs for grouper, and as well as teaching people how to properly measure their fish so that if they are too small or if there's a bag limit, then those fish get released back into the waters so they can live another day and be caught another day when they are full term, or they can just be enjoyed by another individual or family who are out there having fun on the water. There's also artificial reefs and coral reef programs. So the biggest coral reef program is about 60 miles off the coast of Key West and the Dry Tortugas. This area at Fort Jefferson is protected, and it's absolutely gorgeous if you go snorkeling and diving there. You see such a variety of corals and fish species. In artificial reefs, for example, off Collier County, they've been doing an artificial reef program to install 6 new artificial reefs. And I have seen firsthand, as well as heard many accounts, that soon after these reefs were put in place, there's already a variety of fish. Goliath grouper are there, you're seeing sheep's head, cobia, various species of sharks that are starting to move there and hunt there. And this is just showing how we're creating these great havens for fish, but also creating great places for fishermen to go, so that there's a greater variety of where we can go to have fun, to catch some dinner, so on and so forth. And another one's the seagrass restoration program. And the seagrass restoration program is there because many areas of the seagrass where turtles and manatees and a variety of other species have their basically nurseries and hatcheries are protected and are restored so that those fish have those safe places to go, or there's that food source for them. And these seagrass areas have been decimated by boat crops, by just so many different things. And FWC really promotes being a steward to the land, be it on the water or on land, of course. And they are just awesome at teaching people. They have so many great programs, and they just really look to have the educated public. FWC also uses fees that the state gets from the fishing licenses to help keep track of how many people are out there on the water, in freshwater and saltwater, so that we can better choose policies that either open up more fish limits or help restrict them so that those fish are able to populate or are protected as needed. Alright, so Frankie and the fish and I do want to take a couple more minutes to get into something else a little deeper, which is the riparian ecosystem. Now, the riparian ecosystem, as I previously said, is made up with wetlands, estuaries, river basins, and so forth. And it's contributed to by three main things: hydrology, soils and their substrates, and biota. Each of these kind of intermingles with each other and directly contribute to the health of riparian ecosystems and are dependent upon each other. And in a healthy environment, it is a continuous, infinite cycle. Let's look a little closer at some of Florida's efforts for restoration as well as preservation of lands. We've already gotten into what makes up artificial reefs, and it can be anything from culverts to old roadway parts to park benches that are concrete, so on and so forth. We've also looked at the catch and release, which looks at fish sizes as well as protected species to make sure they're released back into the wild. And we talked about the coral reefs as well, with how they are important to our environment. They are resource rich and are beautiful, but they have been seeing a decline over the world through bleaching, through just destruction, so on and so forth. Seagrass restoration and conservation is also important. We got into that, and it, as previously stated, it creates a great home for a variety of species. Microorganisms, baby fish, sea turtles, manatees, for example. And the Sport Fish Restoration Program also looks at how buying fishing licenses, buying fishing gear, buying boat fuel generates money for the state to use for education of fishermen, of more research into these areas and how the populations are doing in coastal, offshore, and inshore regions, but also helps to fund programs such as Take a Child Fishing or sport swimming programs that encourage different populations of the community, different demographics, to go out and fish and enjoy our land and learn more about how to use our natural resources such as our fisheries. Now, FWC also has worked with the state to look at some different terrestrial options as well, such as habitat restoration. And that, for example, has been seen down in the Picayune Strand in Collier County, where it was being highly developed with canals and looking to basically change the water flow there. But now it's protected area, and they've been working to restore a lot of the natural trees, help reintroduce certain animals there, as well as create a safe haven for those animals that have been pushed out by construction in other areas. FWC also has three great programs that are highly intermingled, in my opinion, such as critical wildlife areas, management plans, and safe harbors. Critical wildlife areas are in place so that wildlife that are protected have an area where it is also protected. And management plans, which Picayune Strand is partially a management plan, gives areas where species such as deer can populate, but are also areas where people can go to hunt in a manner that is beneficial to the wildlife as well as the populations as a whole. Now, there are also safe harbors, and an example of a safe harbor would be with the woodpeckers. We all look at them as a red-headed woodpecker, and we know that those are protected species, and they are trying to get that population to grow. And also, as previously mentioned, FWC isn't as involved in this, but the state is becoming more involved, is the Restore the Flow. And we see that a lot with Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary, and what they look to do to get the water flowing from Lake Okeechobee in a more natural direction instead of out towards the sides of the state, and let it just flow down the water table so that the Everglades remain beautiful and full of the wildlife and plant species that we find there. Right, so now that we've looked at the various efforts that have been made and what has created the issues we're seeing and created these challenges, we're wondering oftentimes, what can we do? We can't do it alone. It's just like anything else. We can say we want to do something, but we have to join with others to make sure we're able to do something. Now, a way we can do this is be aware of what resources we're using, how we're using them, and what we're doing in them. We can also look at products that have accreditation as being recycled or helping to be ecologically sound, which means that it's either recycled or, for example, certain fishing products do support things such as the Billfish Foundation, which looks at tracking various sport fish such as marlin, sailfish, swordfish, and monitoring where they are at, where they're going after being released, and looking at how much they grow. And another thing that we can also do is support the local community actions such as beach cleanups, waterland restoration projects, as well as just not doing things that are going to hurt the environment, such as trampling over wetlands in a manner that is just going to really hurt what needs to happen. Because if we destroy these resources, then our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren are going to have greater issues in providing for their families, as well as having their families be able to enjoy the great outdoors.